Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I wanted to share an experimental process with y'all. We have a laser cutter and I'm trying to experiment a little bit with this kit that we sell. I had purchased a commercial contract for a file on Etsy that had all of these different layers in there, and since not everybody has access to a Glowforge or any sort of laser cutter, I thought it'd be cool to sell the bits and pieces. Now it was originally intended, I believe, to be like all the layers stacked up like together, but I found I actually kind of like how it looks in two separate, like kind of more simplistic designs. So I'm going to be using 4 of the layers on, or no, was it 3? Yeah, just 3 of the layers on one design, and then 3. Oh goodness, counting is not my forte today. But yeah, so kind of just setting this 4th piece off to the side. The kit that we sell is all 7 pieces. And then we also sell little components on our website as well, and that's backtoearthcreations.com. And we also have some different mandalas and things that are of our own design over there as well. But we're just going to stack up the 3 pieces and put like a little thing in the middle and kind of see how it goes from there. I'm also going to be incorporating some resin. So to begin, I think I want to leave this base layer just as it is with no color added. Now you could do yours however you prefer. And I'm going to be using these wood finish pens. They're stain markers and they come in, well, I got them in these colors. So this one here is the, what is that? I think that one's the cherry. This one's the dark walnut. Or no, this one might be the red oak and that one might be the cherry, and then this one's the golden oak. Oh no, and I just lost them all. Okay, so I like having these little samples though, because then I can look at it and see, what do I think I'd like in different spots. Let's see, because I think for the sake of doing resin casting, I am going to use the solid piece 1. And then I'm going to use this piece as well, which you can line up the little pointy bits with each other to kind of see how things will be offset and gradiate to give it that 3D look. And then this piece here on top of that. Maybe shift it over one. Now also, I try to always catch it, but sometimes I miss pieces. We have some masking tape from where I taped the boards down, still stuck on this one. So be sure to go through and double, triple check. Even if you haven't purchased from us, that might be something that might still be on there from other manufacturers. And it can actually be kind of quite satisfying to just come through and peel off. Now, I'll try to have a link down in the video description of where we purchased the file from, because I do think that it would be suitable for using with like a Cricut or some different things like that as well. If you don't have these stain markers, something that might work well also would be like alcohol inks, or like an alcohol based marker might be kind of cool. There we go. I like how that kind of stacks in. And then we'll do this piece on top of that. And then where'd that little, there it is. I would still like to do a mandala in the center. So I'm going to begin by, I want to get some dark walnut in here. I'm going to go through on this second layer and give it No, I don't want to do that one. Sometimes just trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. That's what I want to do. Okay, so I'm actually going to come through and use one of these Prismacolor markers. Let me test on a section. Yes, because I want to do a blue glow UV pigment, and I think doing this in blue would just be really stinking cool. So I'm just coming through trying to get even coverage. Coming all around, because I'd like for this blue to hopefully show up really nicely through all the layers of resin that we're going to be doing. And again, this is an experiment. I did not do a prototype piece on this. I think hopefully it'll be pretty neat. Now I think I'm going to go from light to dark, gradiated, like a nice gradient to the center. I also have interest in experimenting with this, like cutting this from acrylic and including some LEDs to see if I can make some that are light up, because I think that'd be neat. You could also, I imagine, use some acrylic paint. I didn't much feel like waiting for anything to dry, and this marker pretty much, like, once it's on, it's on. I don't have to worry about letting it cure or dry fully before putting resin over it. If you're using something like India ink, you may want to let it cure fully. I've had some adverse reactions with India ink with some of the different resins that I use. Oof, that's a lot of coloring. Oh, I bet you could also use colored pencils. Now, on this wood that we're using, I have tried doing some different watercolor stuff before with it, and I actually ended up getting some different warping because it is like a plywood. You can see here, it's not really going on very well. That is some tape. So I'm just going to come through and peel that off. Nice and easy. Now, if you don't much care for the, I personally love the different tones and character that the burn from the laser leaves. And since this piece is for decorating my own home, I decided to leave it. But they're very easy to sand off. It just takes some light hand sanding. And I choose to go the sanding route because it is less work to sand it off than it is to mask the whole thing, do the laser cut, and then peel off all of that masking tape. So that was one color of blue. I'm now going to move up to, and that one is the light cerulean blue. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And now I'm going to move up to true blue, which I think is going to be, oh, very pretty. What's under there? And I'm just gonna go up to the edge here. Like, I'm kind of making a little line in my mind that I'm gradiating out from here. So we could actually, I don't know. I'm not very good at, I'm not very experienced, rather, at coloring with markers. And so I'm really interested in seeing what some of y'all can do with these ideas that I'm sharing in your own artwork, because y'all are so crafty and so talented. Now the good news is you don't have to have like a perfect shade or anything going on, because this is going to have a lot of other stuff going on top of it. I just wanted to capture the essence. And it certainly does absorb differently in the wood depending on which way, with or against the grain you're traveling. So it's something to be mindful of. And also, we could come through here on the points just on those sections. There's no reason to not experiment a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's your own artwork, so you get to make up the rules. Now, I don't know how well like Crayola markers or something like that would work for this, because I don't know how color fast those are. And that is something that if you're making a piece that you want to have in your home or give as a gift to someone you care about and have it in their home, it's really nice to know that the colors that you're laying down will be those colors 5-10 years from now. Now, the nature of resin is that it will yellow over time. So this piece that I'm working on will actually morph into some really interesting grains through the passage of time. So now I'm going to move up to, ooh, we have a nice indigo blue here. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, super dark. I think that's a little too dark actually for what I'm going for. So I actually think I'm gonna just go back to using this light cerulean. And this one does seem to be drying up a little bit. That's all right. I've had these markers for quite a while. It can be a sometimes unfortunate effect of using your art supplies as they do get used up. And I can be so bad sometimes about, you know, I'll get something and it'll be very like precious, or maybe it was more expensive than what I'm used to spending. And so I'll end up hoarding it and never using it. And I'm like, what was the point at all? Life is short. Use the beads, use the markers, make the craft. Or at least that's what I've been trying to self-coach myself on. Okay, so that's a very gentle suggestion of color coming in there. And I'm going to come back in again with the, what is this? True blue. And just color in. I kind of like this. It's like a 3D coloring book. And I'm hoping that the natural tones of the wood will really pop against this. There we go. So that's one layer, and that will actually be on top of this layer. I think that'll look pretty cool. And now we can add this layer here. Oops, a little piece of, oh, that's tape. I was like, what on earth is that? Add that in on top of that. So you can see here now it was very, you almost can't even tell where that gradient was happening. So that really blended those things out. I think I'm going to use the golden oak on this layer. And this is why I have the gloves on, is I don't want this stain on my fingers. And we could go through and do multiple tones on this, but just for the sake of keeping it simple, I'm just going to do one color. So I'm going to hop forward into the future and meet you back here whenever this is completely colored. Okay, so I have a respirator on because fumes, and I also have a vent fan going, so that's what that noise is in the background. But let me see. Okay, yeah, the fumes have cleared significantly. But yeah, keep in mind that is something, this is just like stain, like how you would stain like a floor with or something. So it is stinky dinky. But this is technical terminology. You can also just use markers, colored pencils, alcohol inks, acrylic paint. Just be sure to let it dry completely before applying your resin. So now I am going to be going through with super thick, dummy thick tacky glue. And the fumes are still about, so I'm going to get my respirator back on, and I'm going to throw it into time lapse. That way y'all can see. I'm just applying with the tip of my applicator. And for pieces like this one, I can actually go through and like goop it on and then spread it with like a craft stick. Yeah, so... And instead of using this stuff because it's super duper thick, it's a little too thick, I'm going to be using this, Sobo. Similar concept though, you could use Mod Podge, you could use all sorts of stuff. Again, you'll just want to make sure that you let it dry. And you also want to make sure that it's not going to warp your wood. So I think this stuff does good, but we'll see. Is it dried up? What's going on here? Oh yeah, it's pretty. Big old glob of glue. Now you don't want to get it too close to the edge like how I just did here, because you're going to have to do some cleanup of how it might sit between the teeth on the edge. There we go. The dog hair just makes it more, you know, my own, I suppose. There we go. Set that off to the side to reuse. And so it's not every layer I can be so blasé about placement, but that's all right. So I'm just going to line up these points again. And from here, I have some different clamps, binder clips, clothespins, whipping out the whole arsenal on this one. You could also just place it under something heavy as well. But I kind of really like setting up the clamp system. I'm definitely more concerned about keeping things secure around the edges than I am about in the middle, because if resin leaks in the middle, it'll be fine. You know, it's just leaking into other parts of the design. Whereas if it leaks around the edges, we're gonna have a mess. Whoops! And it looks like we got a little bit of something stuck in there. Let's see. I've got a little awl. You can just pluck that out. There we go. So yeah, I'm just going full on around the perimeter of this. I really like these clamps and the binder clips best, but just using what I got. So I'm going to leave that to sit. And now we will put it into time lapse as I apply glue to the back side of this. So let's get to it. Okie dokie. So we are here doing a thing, and I was having a difficult time getting the glue onto these like edges here without it being, as you can see, super extra. So I decided I really do want them to like just stick for, you know, if we decide to do resin there. So by just getting some onto this popsicle stick, I'm being a bit sloppy with it, but hey, that's just me. And just using this glass board as a palette, because stuff peels really easily off of it, and I'm a disaster, so bear with me. So I'm just going to be going through around the edges here, because this glue fortunately does dry clear, or like clearish white. I don't know, it's not perfectly clear, but we're getting what we're getting. But I kind of like just squeegeeing some on there. And if y'all have any tips or advice for me or for anybody else watching this on how you'd recommend attaching these, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. I'm going to kind of get in there and clear that out. There we go. You could also use wood glue for this, but this is what I have on hand. And I'm a big fan of just using whatever is immediately closest to me in my craft room. Okay, so we have this, and I'm going to give it the old flipperoo. And you can kind of see in the way that the pattern is, we've got the segments that are behaved like that, and we've got the segments that have that little bit of split. So that's where I'm going to line these up. And I think that'll be all right. Now I think we have officially exceeded past where clothespins can come. I don't know, maybe. We might be able to fit some clothespins on here. but I do want to make sure that everything is just as nice and centered up as what I can get it. So coming in with the clamps and the clips. Just trying to keep things from shifting on me, so kind of catching them at opposite positions. Oof. There we go. And then I'm going to set this back off to the side, and I think I'm going to do a very dark line, or no, we'll keep it nice and light, I think, for this. I don't know, actually. I think I am going to do the dark walnut on this piece here. So now I'm going to stain or apply glue to the back side of this little mandala that we have. I'm just trying to get a reasonable application. I think that'll be just fine. And now I'm going to take this and I'm going to just bloop right in the center of it. And make sure everything is a little equidistant before cleaning up the front. Now we could just completely leave this here like this, with just the different wood layers applied together. But I am going to experiment with, I want to try filling up these cells with the glow-in-the-dark resin just to see how that goes, because I do think it would be pretty neat. So I'm going to get this top piece glued on in time lapse and let the glue dry up, and so I'll meet you guys back here. Okay, so I'm coming through now and doing a bit of cleanup. If you were tidier, let's see. If at any point you put in any sort of effort and were tidier than I am, I'm just a messy burrito of a person, really, when it comes down to it. So yours will probably end up being much tidier than mine, if that's a priority to you. But I don't know, I kind of like a little bit of chaos in my day. And you can come through, if you let it dry just a bit, you can just kind of get the glue off in little goobies. Or if you catch it wet enough, you can come through and just stipple it a little bit, and with a paintbrush that you don't mind gluing up. And this will, I think, help seal everything. So the resin that I'm going to be using after all of my glue is dry, because if there's any moisture in there, it may negatively react with the resin. But the resin I'm using is Art and Glow. It's my absolute favorite, I do think, of all the resins on the market that I've tried. Art Glow, Total Glow, all of the different, I keep finding myself coming back to Art and Glow. It's the perfect balance of functionality. This is not sponsored, by the way, but it works for whether I am doing a pour or whether I am casting in something, like in a mold. It also works whether I want something clear or whether I want something suspended. Has a nice long pop time, and it's affordable. I think it's pretty affordable, and I get pretty consistent results with it as well, which consistency, oh boy, consistency is nice. So I'm just gonna keep kind of poking this until it's dry, and then we will mix up our resin. And I think I'm gonna get it bottled up. So I'm gonna show you the, oh yeah, gotta clamp it. Oof, that clamp is strong. So go through, add the clamps, but I'm going to be using Art and Glow resin with some, it's just Art and Glow brand glow powder, really. It's pretty good stuff. And I'm making sure to clamp on the tips that are the full stack. I want all of that clamped together. There we go. And then it's just a matter of clamping there, clamping there. Very cool. So yeah, I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'll meet y'all right back here. Okay, so I have my cup here that we're going to be mixing just 2 ounces, because I don't think that's, I don't know, we might do, I think we're going to start with 2 ounces. I can always mix up more, but I think this isn't going to use as much as I am afraid it will. And just in case I've mixed up too much, I do have some extra molds that we've made over here for other projects. So I am using Art and Glow fluorescent blue glow powder, as well as just a very small amount of this Pearlex Sky Blue. That's number 647 of their mica powders. So I'm going to start with the hardener. I'm just going to pour an ounce. Whoops, bumped the tripod. There we go. 1 ounce. And sorry, I don't mean to keep bumping the tripod. A 2nd ounce. Whoop. Now this has like a 45-minute pot time, so we've got time here. It says to mix equal parts resin and hardener, slowly stir for 3 to 5 minutes, add in any pigments, pour over the object you're coating or into a mold, use a torch or heat gun, cover and let cure for 24 hours. So I am going to get to stirring, and I like to stir nice and slow. I'd rather be slow and steady and thorough than fast and whipping in a whole bunch of air into what we're doing here. So I will meet you back here in 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, so now it is powder time. I'm going to be quite generous with this, and I have a fear that it's going to cover up some of the 3D details, but that's why I'm experimenting with you guys, is so that you can learn from my mistakes. But I also really want this to be very, like, glowy, so we're gonna use, like, 2 teaspoons of powder. There we go. And now just a little bit of this shimmery sky blue. Just enough to add a little shimmer. And I was intensely heavy-handed on this blue, but that's because I want it to glow, you know, like really intensely. So we basically have lost all of the translucent properties, but we'll see how this goes. It's for science, right? And I'm kind of milling it against the side of the cup to make sure that any chunks are getting de-chunkified. It's looking pretty good. So now from here, I have this applicator bottle. I'm going to take the cap off. And then I'm going to pour into the bottle. And I'm actually going to remove this little cap part because it just gets in the way for me. It really. Okay, let's start doing it to it. So I'm going to start here in the center, just slowly filling in the first layer, because I want it to settle into all of those corners and crannies without catching like bubbles. So we're literally doing this drop by drop, and that's okay. I also think this would be really cool to experiment with doing, like, with a mirror as the back layer. Though I'd have to use a different adhesive for that, I'm pretty sure. Something that binds to glass. Okay, so now I get to start in on this part. That is going to have some complications because I've got openings covered by the wood there on the front. Now, the nice thing about this having a long pot time is that it gives us a long time for the bubbles to rise to the surface. tidying things up just a little bit. So since this piece isn't solidly backed by wood, it's going to keep kind of seeping, and so I'm going to have to make things pretty tall here on the outside part to make it be just as high in the center. If that makes sense. Since this stuff is self-leveling, we shouldn't have too hard of a time getting it all to be nice and, well, level. Okay, now I'm going to start coming in and filling in these spots. And I'm going to start with alternating, just because if I do run out of the UV, like this first mix, what we'll end up doing is maybe mixing up another color or mixing it up to where it's not quite as intense and gradiating it out to the edge that way. I personally think that would be pretty cool. So this is actually using up way more resin than I thought it would. But that is okay. So that's looking pretty neat. What do y'all think of that? Oops. Because I want to leave the surface of the wood exposed. At least on that one. These guys are looking a little low. Because again, looking for that really intense glow. And I'm going to cap in just a little bit more to make sure that these are filled up nice. There we go. And it does look like we're getting a little bit of seepage, but I think that's okay. Ooh, I actually think this looks really neat, y'all. So I'm just going to come in, overfill a little bit on these ones, these sections here. Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to have to mix up a second batch, and I think that will be just fine. And I'm really liking how this resin almost seems to activate the marker that we used. on the wood. Like in some of these spots. I don't know, maybe it was just the gradient came out nicer than I thought it would. Now also, I'm not going to lie to you, it would help a whole lot if my surface were flat. Like a whole lot, actually. But I'm really, really liking how this is coming out. So I'm just going to fill in this tip here. Just the repetition of the pattern can really go so far in making something look thought out and intentional. Because honestly, even just leaving it like this, I think looks really neat, y'all. Oh, it's not so bad without the respirator on. It really helps having that vent fan going. But yeah, really, really pleased. So I don't think I'm going to fill in all of the crevices on this, just because I am liking the contrast and differences and stuff. It really, wow. Like, that's pretty cool, y'all. I don't know, do you think I should fill in? I don't think I have enough to fill in all of these tips. I think I'm just gonna kind of top off whichever ones look like they could use it. Yeah, it's the only problem with setting the bottle down, is then you have to wait for everything to find its way back to where gravity's pulling it. Let's see, I'm going to top these guys off just a little bit because they do seem to be seeping into their neighbors, but not so much that it's a problem. Like, I still think it looks pretty cool. But we may experience a little bit of shrinking with this resin as well. Kind of like if you've ever cast candles, like made wax candles, how whenever it cools, it settles. Well, it's not cooling, but as the resin cures, it can shrink a little bit. And depending on what resin you're using, you may get different amounts of shrinkage. So that's why I'm going to come through and top off these bad boys just a little bit. You know, because I don't think I ever went through, did I add some into these ones? I may have. I don't know. I just work here. But I think this could look really cool after the resin has cured, or even at this point, if you wanted to add little crystals or gemstones or rhinestones or beads or shells or anything like that, you could kind of embed it into the different sections of the design and really get something unique, truly your own going on. And now I am going to go through after about 30 minutes and hit this with a heat gun just to make sure all the surface bubbles are popped. I like to treat it with a heat gun as opposed to a torch because, well, this is a wooden project, and well, I bet you can guess about how well the torch would do. Now if that's the effect you're going for, setting things on fire, then for sure do that. But I like to use the heat gun within the limit of the pot time of the resin that I'm using, because if you wait until afterwards, you're not gonna get, I don't get as good of results. You may, have better technique or something, but I like to get it while it's still good and soupy, and while the resin itself is still willing to let go of those bubbles. And y'all, it looks like 2 ounces was just perfect. So I'm not going to be hitting this with the heat gun on camera. It really is pretty straightforward. It's just like using a hair dryer across the surface. I really, really like that. And I'm really glad we decided to leave some empty space going on in there, because, man, it really does just give a nice, more layered effects. So now I'm going to set this off to the side just a bit, and I am going to turn it every couple of minutes because my work surface is not level. And I'm going to use what we have left in our bottle and in our cup, mostly what's in our cup, to fill up this mold, because you can see how that all settled in there. So I'm just going to scrape, 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 scrape. There's no sense in ever wasting any resin. You can always make something pretty out of the scrap. Even if you just pour the scrap onto like a sheet of silicone, like baking mat or something, you can then use that and like heat it up with a heat gun after it's been cured. Like peel it off of the sheet, heat it up, and drape it and make like some interesting pen holders and different things. If that's something you'd like to see in a future tutorial, be sure to let me know, because I'm kind of getting more and more back into resin. I don't know, I always follow where my crafting calls me, and it's calling me back, so I must go. And I'd love to hear what ideas y'all would like to see in future tutorials. So I will show this to you guys again through the magic of editing after it's dried. So it's not even like properly dark out. And check out how much it's glowing! Oh, that's so cool. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. What do you think, Randy?
It looks great.
Alright, y'all, so this is how it's looking with a light on. It's pretty dark, like the sunset. So that gives you some ideas there, but what I really wanted to show... Okay, so this was only charged up for a couple of seconds under the glow of... Oh, where'd that flashlight go? The glow of an LED light. But here you can see how it fluoresces. And hopefully this should charge it up a little bit better. But if you're interested in purchasing any items like this, you can check out our website, backtoearthcreations.com. If you enjoy our free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, please consider joining our Craft Along Club. For as little as $1 a month, you support weekly tutorials, sometimes bi-weekly if we can manage it. You also get access to all sorts of different behind-the-scenes content and different things like that. And we also send out our Craft Along kits, where we send out monthly... Sorry, I'm just so entranced by this. We send out monthly packages that include, depending on which tier you're in, wire, handmade, fused glass cabochons, polymer clay, resin, just whatever we've got going on. So again, it glows much brighter if you get it under actual daylight. I think we captured that a little earlier in the video, but this is it just if you had the lights on in your room and then switched them off. I think it's pretty nice. I'm really interested in maybe making some like this that have LEDs set in them. So that, or maybe make this in a way that you could put it over a light fixture, that way it really charges up, and then whenever you switch off the light, it's still nice and glowing. So thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me during this video, and until next time, happy crafting. Bye.